Welcome to another episode of The Spirit of the Father, where I dive into different movies that exemplify strength, courage, integrity, aspects of the Father that we're all looking for within ourselves. So, in today's episode, I want to dive into the movie Gandhi. It's one of my favorites, and it is that because there is a wisdom with Gandhi that I discovered years ago. And I'll always premise this by saying, trust in God, not in man. Don't be worshiping Gandhi. If you agree with the truth that people speak, it comes in different ways and different people. And specifically, I want to share a couple quotes from him first. And I've shared this quote in other videos, and I think it's very powerful. And this here, he speaks a lot about nonviolence. And I've said before, there's a difference between apathy and passivity versus neutrality. And I think he exemplifies neutrality. But he goes on to say, nonviolence is not a cover for cowardice, but it is the supreme virtue of the brave. Exercise of nonviolence requires far greater bravery than that of swordsmanship. Cowardice is wholly inconsistent with nonviolence. Translation from swordsmanship to nonviolence is possible and at times even an easy stage. Nonviolence, therefore, presupposes the ability to strike. It is a conscious, deliberate restraint put upon one's desire for vengeance. But vengeance is any day superior to passive, effeminate, and helpless submission. Forgiveness is higher still. Vengeance, too, is weakness. The desire for vengeance comes out of fear of harm, imaginary or real. A dog barks and bites when he fears. A man who fears no one on earth will consider it too troublesome even to summon up anger against one who is vainly trying to injure him. The sun does not wreak vengeance upon little children who throw dust at him. They only harm themselves in the act. The path of true nonviolence requires much more courage than violence. And he goes on to say here in another quote, my creed of nonviolence is an extremely active force. It has no room for cowardice or even weakness. There is hope for a violent man to be someday nonviolent, but there is none for a coward. Love that. So, and what's so cool about this is that he basically expresses this idea that there's different layers to this. That someone who at least is a soldier, someone who is actively, there's violence in him. There's more courage there than someone who's weak and pretending to be. There's this kind of, and I think everybody can relate to that. It's someone who is pretending to be strong, but they're actually weak. They say peaceful things, but inwardly they're cowards. And what I respect about Gandhi and why I think that he exemplifies in parts of his life this aspect of courage is that in other writings of his, he goes into pointing out his own weaknesses and how he harbored violence and how he was a coward. And I think that's one of the best qualities of a strong man is to take ownership for your weaknesses. So, but onto the main point of this video, and that is the movie made about him. And this is one of my favorite scenes. And if you look it up on YouTube, you can find it. And it's the Gandhi speech scene. You can just look that up, and this is just a picture of that. And where he's speaking, there's corruption in the government, and I'm just going to go on to read here the scene. So, and it's cool how they have just pictures here. So he says to everybody, I want to welcome you all, every one of you. We have no secrets. Let us begin by being clear about General Smut's new law. All Indians must now be fingerprinted, like criminals, men and women. No marriage other than a Christian marriage is considered valid. Under this act, our wives and mothers are whores, and every man here is a bastard. And his fellow men are saying he's becoming quite good at this. And our policemen passing an Indian dwelling, I will not call them homes, may enter and demand the card of any Indian woman whose dwelling it is. Understand, he does not have to stand at the door. He may enter. And you see the crowd getting upset. I will not allow it. I swear to Allah, I'll kill the man who offers that insult to my home and my wife, and let them hang me. Number three, I say talk means nothing. Kill a few officials before they disgrace one Indian woman. Then they might think about such laws. Audience member number four, in that cause, I would be willing to die. And this is where I love the angle he goes. I praise such courage. I need such courage because in this cause I too am prepared to die. But my friend, there is no cause for which I am prepared to kill. Whatever they do to us, we will attack no one, kill no one. But we will not give our fingerprints, not one of us. They will imprison us and they will fine us. They will seize our possessions, but they cannot take away our self respect if we do not give it to them. And of course, the pushback from another audience member. Have you been to prison? They will beat us, torture us. I say that we shouldn't. He cuts him off and says, I am asking you to fight against their anger, not to provoke it. We will not strike a blow, but we will receive them. And through our pain, we will make them see their injustice. And it will hurt, as all fighting hurts. But we cannot lose. We cannot. And there's the famous line that they put into the movie, they may torture my body, break my bones, even kill me. Then they will have my dead body, not my obedience. We are Hindu and Muslim, children of God, each one of us. Let us take a solemn oath in his name that come what may, we will not submit to this law. I think of Thomas Jefferson when tyranny becomes law, rebellion becomes duty. There is this has been an age-old problem throughout time that when we're faced with corruption, what do we do? Do we fight or do we run? Do we fight or do we run? But this type of wisdom that he shares is a higher wisdom. And that's why I shared this quote here before, which I think is very powerful. My creed of nonviolence is an extremely active force. This active force is that we should still speak how we see things. We should still speak and actively engage. Now, how we choose to go about that, that's an internal process within. Everybody has to choose how they want to make their next chess move in life. But apathy and cowardice are wholly inconsistent with this. It's better to act. It's better to be angry than it is to be apathetic, as I share in that chart of consciousness often. And that is incredibly important, especially now when we see mask mandates and vaccine mandates, and regardless of what side you're on, if you believe something is wrong, you have a duty to follow that through. Now, how you go about it requires wisdom. You can have all of the answers in the world, but if you make the wrong chess move, you will um, you will suffer because of that, suffer worse. And that's the paradox of that, is that we're all called to make that chess move. We're all called to have courage of our conviction. So if you believe something is wrong, you have a duty to speak it forward. Again, how you do that is up to you. But as you continue to make those decisions, and some of them are not going to be perfect. In fact, your first chess move, if you're someone who has been in a state of apathy, is not, it's going to be bad. But that's how you grow in the wisdom. You grow in the wisdom by making the wrong mistakes. You grow in the wisdom by making a move. And that's what we need more of in the world. And what I love about Gandhi's approach, especially in this movie, is there's common themes, and he speaks about Christ in the movie as well. Um, that there is this wisdom that's there. Christ was active in his motivations. He took, he was forgiving, but he was also active. And in this overly tolerant and weak and lukewarm world, we are called to not live that way. We're called to take responsibility within and actively move forward and to be the example for other people. And when that sounds very nice, but when we are actually the example, what he points to in that scene is that we are going to be hated, but we are going to, what I love how he says, we're going to fight against their anger, not provoke it. And you can see this in a lot of the division in our world today. How many people are on one side or the other, and they're not receiving that hate, right? Because people's biggest enemy is themselves, and anybody who disagrees with people's belief systems that they're attached to, now you become the enemy. But in this movie, he invites people. He wants to receive their anger. He wants to, but not provoke it. And that's what he says, where there's a corrupt law that's being pushed. He says we're not going to follow the law because we know it is corrupt, but we are going to expose them in their own corruption. And it's not a proud thing. When something's wrong, um, again, when tyranny becomes law, rebellion becomes duty. And who gets to decide? Well, everybody's going to have a different view. You just have to know and trust yourself that if you believe something is wrong, and think it through, and speak with other people, and and the people who you trust, people who will push back on ideas, people who are constructive criticism, and people who do not praise you just because they're your friend. They praise you because of the belief systems that you're attached to. And again, the higher the belief system, the more strength and courage in your convictions. You can't fake authenticity. You can't fake it. You can for some people, but um, ultimately, the higher the truth, the more that you have, the more that there's the power works through you, and the more that you think you're the truth, the more that this is the inverted view that you have all the answers. We know it when we're around those types of people. So I invite you to check out this movie. It's a long one. It's like 3 hours, but there are so many scenes, and you can see kind of the transformation of it, because Gandhi was originally a lawyer. Now he becomes this holy man. He has all this, and you can see, it's really cool to see that transformation in this movie. And always as a disclaimer, worship God, not in man. You know, I've always heard different things of Gandhi's life, a lot of negative things that have come out. But when you focus on a person, you're going to be let down. If you dig for dirt on Gandhi, you'll find it. You dig for dirt on me, you'll find it. You dig for dirt on any political person or someone um, who did a lot of good in their life, you'll find it. And the important thing is to focus on the good. And it doesn't mean that people should be held responsible for their actions, whatever that may be. Everyone's in a different place. But this idea of redemption is within all of us. We've all fallen short. We've all made mistakes in our life. And um, we are called to fight that battle within, to turn away from our own sin, to be reborn, and to understand it internally, not to just do it out there. But again, this is one of my favorite movies because it is such a hard thing to really express that. That's why I shared um, that those scenes of the people in the crowd pushing back on what he's saying, because this is something that is, it doesn't make sense to the rational mind. You're either fight or flight, and he's pointing to something that is higher than that. And how he says, I praise such courage, and the humility to say, I need such courage. Because to say something like this, where he goes on to say his famous line, they may torture my body, break my bones, even kill me, then they will have my dead body, not my obedience. That's a great line, isn't it? But how many of us would walk that truly? And I think the only way that we can walk that is by this right here. It's humility, saying, I need such courage. And I say that on this channel. I need the same courage that makes someone have those words. I need the same courage that Christ had, that says, forgive them, they know not what they do. When people are being mean and wrong and living in sin, I need that same courage because, one, I've been there. I've been in sin. I've lived wrong in my life, in different parts of my life. And two, to take on that, as he says, we will not strike a blow, but we will receive them. And through our pain, we will make them see their injustice, and it will hurt, as all fighting hurts. This really exemplifies the importance of active non-resistance, active peaceful resistance. And again, you can't fake it. You have to lean into it. You have to be around like-minded people who understand this, because to many people, you're going to look passive, and that's part of the game. I'm sure many people had that same view of Christ. What do you mean not? What do you mean turn the cheek? Well, there's a deeper wisdom within turn the cheek. It's not the turn the cheek out of cowardice. It's turning the cheek because you realize that people's biggest enemy is with themselves. People's biggest enemy, to this is egoic. It's not about um, being seen as right. It's doing right. It's acting right and becoming the right example, which which is a lot. It's a lot more difficult than one side or the other. It's easy to just sit on the sidelines, and it's easy to just fight, just be fighting. You always have an enemy, but to have no enemy within, as he goes on to say in this other quote, which I shared at the beginning, The Son does not wreak vengeance upon little children who throw dust at him. They only harm themselves in the act. And that's what I think about when I think of Judas. Now, many might argue, well, you should fight against Judas. But think about within our own lives. When you fight people, you say that you're wrong. You tell them to go another way. You can, but sometimes people have to that they have to walk their own path, and they have to really say, even in that kind of a situation where he betrays Christ, and what happens? He ends up killing himself. As this saying goes, they only harm themselves in the act. This is a higher place of being. This is a place of love, because people think they're getting away with it, but you really don't get away with anything. And again, this is Gandhi, another episode of The Spirit of the Father. I invite you guys to check out this movie. And again, plenty more of these videos to come. I know this is for some people, this might not be the first, movie that you want to watch. You're more into more entertainment. So this is for the individual who maybe is further along in the path, people who are really seeking answers at a place they really want to understand this. And it's not for everybody. So that's why I really want to share different videos. Some to come are going to be Lion King, Gladiator. I did the first one was on Goodwill Hunting. These may be more relatable, at different points on depending on where you are on your journey. And some people don't even watch movies. They don't, they're not connected with movies. They're more into books. They're more into reading. So for me, I've been a big movie buff, and I want to share the movies that have really exemplified deeper truths, and plenty more to come. Check out Gandhi. There was one other clip that I wanted to share, and I would post these videos from the movie, but I'll probably get flagged for copyright, so that's why I just read through the script. And there's a few other quotes here. So, but the first one, this is from another scene. If you look it up, you look up Gandhi court scene, and the court says to him, in quotes, non cooperation has one aim, the overthrow of the government. Sedition must become our creed. We must give no quarter, nor can we expect any. And the judge says to him, do you deny writing that? He says, not at all. And he goes on to say, I will save the court's time, my lord, by stating under oath that to this day I believe non cooperation with evil is a duty. The prosecution rests, my lord. And he goes on to say, I presume you are conducting your own defense. Gandhi says, I have no defense, my lord. I am guilty as charged. And if you truly believe in your system of law, you must inflict on me the severest penalty possible. And then the judge says to him, it is impossible for me to ignore that you're a different category from any person I have ever tried or am likely to try. Nevertheless, it is my duty to sentence you to 6 years imprisonment. If, however, His Majesty's government should, at some later date, see fit to reduce the term, no one will be better pleased than I. And that last line, regardless, even though they're in complete disagreement, that last line shows respect. That this kind of fighter mentality, you can't help but respect someone who stays true to what they believe. And this is where you kind of see this is the difference between someone who's passive and someone who's actively non-resistant. And it's such a flip, because basically what he's saying is I want the severest penalty possible. Well, who has the courage to say something like that? Only someone who sees how deeply corrupt the law has become. Someone who understands how that you can't fight evil with the same type of way that evil operates, which is eye for an eye. It requires deep, deep wisdom. And there was a few other quotes I want to share here. Keep this short. And where he talks about fighting, he goes, where there's injustice, I always believed in fighting. The question is, do you fight to change things, or do you punish, or to punish? For myself, I found that we're all such sinners, and we should leave punishment to God. And if we really want to change things, there are better things than derailing trains, or slashing someone with a sword. And then character in the movie, do you really believe you could use nonviolence against someone like Hitler? And Gandhi says, not without defeats and great pain. But are there no defeats in war, no pain? What you cannot do is accept injustice from Hitler or anyone. You must make the injustice visible and be prepared to die like a soldier to do so. Another scene, think of what you can do by living that you cannot do by dying. What do you want? That the fighting will stop, that you make me believe it will never start again. And again, this is not for the weak. A lot of people I'm sure will hear this and they'll disagree. And I invite disagreement. I don't want people to just buy into a belief system that I'm sharing, but I can't help but appreciate the courage. And there is courage. Yeah, I think anybody would be foolish to say Christ did not have courage. It takes courage to do these kinds of things, and that's why so few people do it. And I appreciate the honesty, as he says, where he says in where he says you must you must make the injustice visible and be prepared to die like a soldier to do so. I think that's what brings this, as he says in the earlier quote, the difference between someone who's passive, someone who's violent, and someone who is truly nonviolent. Is that both the nonviolent and the violent have the soldier mentality, which is they're willing to die for what they believe in. And I think it takes far greater courage to be willing to die and not act in violence. And it takes wisdom. And it's not something easy to do. As he says in the previous scene, he needs that same courage. And the translation from swordsmanship to nonviolence is easier than someone who's a complete coward to being nonviolent. Because you at least you have to own your own violence. You have to own and then make a conscious, deliberate choice not to be violent. So again, great movie to check out. I just wanted to add these few other quotes in here because that other scene too, I think is very powerful. It's a way of going into something that is corrupt. Rather, there's oftentimes this is a chess move. Sometimes the best chess move is to go into the fight. You go into, you expose it. You're flipping the script. You're saying, you know what? If you truly, it's really a sort of fight. If you truly believe in what you're doing, there's no beating you this way. There's no way I can convince you in rational means that what you're doing is wrong. So give me the severest penalty possible, and I'll bear that pain so that maybe you may change your view. And to me, that's again, it's a very powerful way. It's another way of looking at anxiety, a more simpler answer, right? When you're trying to fix somebody's anxiety or depression or any false belief system that people are attached to, one of the best things that people can do is exposure therapy, gradually exposing somebody to something instead of fighting that anxiety. When you fight anxiety, you fight depression, you often perpetuate it. And in the same way, when you're fighting injustice, when you're fighting people who are unreasonable, one of the best things to do is not to say that they're wrong, but to expose why they're wrong. And you have to bear that pain, as all fighting hurts. So I think that is a tremendous form of wisdom. And again, I wanted to share that with you guys because there's a lot of injustice going on in the world. There's a lot of corruption going on in the world. We only overcome that by overcoming ourselves and growing deeper into wisdom within. The kingdom of heaven is within, as a wise man once said. So check out Gandhi.